Good evening, I would say. I'm going to present Gluon. It's a small platform for art, science, technology based in Brussels, and I wanted to keep it a little bit general since we have a short time. But I wanted to start with a reflection that I saw this morning on the airport of Zaventem, and it was a publicity of Hyundai. And it said, the world of the future will be green and digital. And it looked very beautiful. And I was a little bit less depressed because when we look at what happens today in our society, we are confronted with many different challenges. There is climate, there is fake news, we have our geographical problems. And more, when we look at society, but also at politics, they look at artists to help us solve these problems. They also look at artists to bring innovation in our world. Social innovation, sometimes some real digital innovations. And I think we have to reflect upon this, on the role of an artist. I'm convinced that an artist can do that he can use digital technologies, that he can be speculative, that he can try to find solutions. We had the constructivists in the past. But on the other hand, an artist is also something different. It's somebody who thinks about existential problems in life that can be quite intimate. Somebody who brings beauty in our world. And it's not always easy to connect the expectations that are there in Europe, look at the Bauhaus, with the real role and intention of an artist to be in our life. But that's what we try to do with Gluon. We try to connect artists, scientists, entrepreneurs, young people, ICT experts together to try to find solutions in our world. And I can say it's not always easy. And within the context of START, we have developed some sort of methodology, but we are always in progress. START is already going on for 10 years. This is the European Science, Technology and Arts Program. And we always look at new ways on how we can bring those people together and what the outcome would be. Because more or less, sometimes people think the outcome, in the form of START, it should be a digital tool. It should be a prototype. So the question of the output is already there. It's not easy. When you bring people together, you have to define what the output will be. And that's why we developed this methodology that you see here. So we had an identify phase. This is a local expert group, and somebody is here. It's Alexandra, co-founder of Snowball. It's a clean tech hub who, together with local communities, were looking at what were the problems in Flanders related to biodiversity. And they launched an open call and asked artists to apply, not with concrete proposals, but with their artworks. And this is the identify phase that is intermediated by the people of Gluon. So we try to make the best connections between local expert groups and between artists so that they want to collaborate. We just don't put them together like nothing, because you need human connection. So this was already important that we learned that, and we stole that from another organization in France, which is Les Nouveaux Commanditaires. They had a very nice way of bringing artists together with local communities to build sculptures on roundabouts, because they used to be very empty and ugly, but they wanted the communities to decide what would happen on the roundabouts. Then we have the connect phase. It's really, it's already what I explained. It's making the connections between the local communities and the artists. And then we have the speculative phase. And the speculative phase is the different iterations where they're going to work together, where they're also going to define what the outcome is. And I can tell you that's not an easy process. Just to give an example, again, with the founding director, Stéphane Grosjean, who's an industrialist in Flanders. As an industrialist, he's quite techno-solutionist, I could say. He believes that new technologies in the green tech, that they will help to reach the climate goals by 2050. And I'm also positive there. I hope that technology will help. But there was a discussion with architect and urbanist in Belgium between Stéphane, and he's called Luc Deleu. He's a real artist. And he didn't agree at all. He said, no, people have to change their behavior. Instead of building more, we have to wear warm clothes. We don't have to isolate. people have to change behavior. So you see, in this phase, you have these real discussions between people from different fields, scientists, industrialists, and artists. And I think that is fantastic that we can still have this, and that this is supported by the Commission and by different European programs. Otherwise, it might not happen, and everybody would stay in the silos. So but it's a whole process of discussion. We call it some sort of heterotopia. It's not utopic, it's not dystopic, it's something in between, but it's where the truth comes out. And then, of course, there's the outcome. This can be many different things in this methodology. It can be a workshop for young people. Education is very important for us. It can be a paper by a researcher. It can be a speculative artwork. It can be a prototype. We just leave it open. It's up on the people to decide. I was sitting in the airplane this morning, and I wanted to say two things on this phase because it's the most important. I was thinking about Huizinga is a medievist in Europe, was very renowned, and he said, people have to play in our world. We don't have to always say, we're going to prototype, we're going to do a hackathon, we're going to find solutions, and we have to do it as fast as possible. No, we have to create the space where people can play. And that doesn't mean that we don't take it serious. We take it serious as hell. But it's the place where people can do things without having to do something for society that is too concrete. And I think this is very important in this methodology. I'm going to give some examples of what we do. It's not always digital. Maria, excuse me for this. This is the Starts for Water project. It's one European program, and it was about the sustainability of water management and how artists and researchers and communities could do something around this. And one open call we did, because we always work with open calls, was the Brussels-based artist Hassib Ahmed. And he wanted to do something about what happens with pharmaceutical things that fall in the toilet and then go into nature and are very destructive. It's one of the biggest problems in the pharma industry. We don't have too much pharma industry because they didn't want to participate. It's too sensitive. But we had the Koepel organization that represents the different pharma partners and who were there to advise the artists on the problems. And this was, in fact, our local expert group. You see it. It's supported by a school. Pole Water Group, it's a company that they make swimming pools. Very strange when you go for climate and you work with a company making swimming pools, okay. Pharma.be, Inopsis is an engineer firm, but also with lots of expertise in the chemical industry. Vlaqua is a think tank on water management in Flanders. And Capture is for the sanitation of water. It's a department at the University of Ghent. So this was the expert group working with Hassib, and then he had to give an answer on how are we going to make our water management more sustainable. And it's really interesting to see the process. That's are the things that inspired Hassib. On the left hand, you see a beautiful painting of Granach the Elder. You can go and see it in Berlin. The Fountain of Youth. It's some sort of mythological thing, but it's a fountain that was very popular in the Renaissance because they thought it really existed. But it's a place where you can go to, you go and bath in the water, and then you become younger. And when you go out, you're a young person. You see the old hills, they represent elderdom in life, and you see the fresh, lush forest, it represents longevity in life. And you see that it are all women going into the swimming pool. When they are old, they are in wheelchairs, and they come out very young, and then they go in a tent where lots of things happen. And they're accepted by young men. Because in the Renaissance, they thought that it was not very politically correct, but that men, to become young, they didn't need the source. They had to do something with a young woman. So it's completely not politically correct, but it's an interesting painting, I find. So that was one inspiration for the artists. Then the other one are the old water clocks, old pieces of engineering. And then, of course, there's contemporary or modern art. Marcel Duchamp, it's a toilet. So what did they do with the group? They made a couple of prototypes of an artwork that makes pharmaceutical pollution discussable. And one of the biggest problems is anti-aging pharmaceutics. That's why he referred to Lucas Granach the Elder. So people use it to stay young, but by doing this, they ruin nature and all the biodiversity that is in our waters in Flanders. So he made some sort of conceptual installation where people can bring their anti-aging things, put it into the water, and it's like a fountain. It's recuperated by a machinery, and then it goes back into the system of vessels that you see, and this is an old clock. So the polluted water goes into the vessels. In 1 hour they are filled, and then something moves, and that is how you get time. And then it ends up again in the basin of water. So in fact, it's a time clock that makes all different questions about pollution, about aging, about why we use medicines, what we do with medicines. It's also quite controversial. That's why there would be a toilet in the museum where people could really also defecate. So it's quite radical, but I think it should be radical to ask questions. And this was the project they are working on. Nothing digital for this one. We have another project, and then I'm going to stop if I still have some time. Regional Start Centers. It's also a European program. The open calls were interactive, productive landscapes. And we worked with a team, Studio Above and Below. They are artist designers, much more specialized in VR and AR at this moment. And they will work around soils in Flanders. Because one of the biggest challenges in Europe, we always think about solution of water, of air, but not about the soil. And apparently, also in the Mediterranean countries of Europe, it's a big problem. We are really creating deserts because of the chemical things we put in the floor, because of industrialization, city planning, urban building. And we're really destroying our soil. And sometimes it takes more than 200 years to have a healthy soil with the right biodiversity. So they were working with the local farmers and local communities to see how can we make the pollution of our soil or the healthiness of our soil discussable. And they're creating with different sensors and game engines some sort of virtual reality. So people will have an iPad and they will walk through a landscape, and then they will see a sculpture that represents the condition of the soil on which they are working. I think I have a little video of what they are doing for the moment. It will look a little bit like this. So here I think we really have an interesting form of digital innovation. We should only use the digital when it's also necessary, I find. But here you see a beautiful application. It's also nice that with different institutions such as Gluon, but also many others that are here, that we can build further on former projects. Because if you really want to make the difference, you really should give time and resources to artists that they can make the difference. So we don't always start from scratch. Sometimes we just take over existing projects like these, and we build further on them and implement them in other contexts. I'm just going to keep it with those two examples. Thank you very much.